Hey, welcome. As we start this live session, if you are here on any of our channels, let us know who you are and where you are in the world, but also what channel you're on. Feel free to just say a hello and let me know if you can hear me. Hello, Al. Welcome and thanks for being out there. How's the sound? Can you hear me okay? Welcome, Bailey. Looks like our YouTube channel is working. Leah, wonderful to have you here. Sora, welcome. Okay, and we're on LinkedIn as well. All right, everyone. It looks like we're mostly up and running here, so I'm going to go ahead and dive in. If you are coming, if you're arriving on a different channel, just let us know that you are here, where you're at in the world. And let's just take a moment. So take a deep breath. Feel your butt on the chair if you are sitting down. If you're not, that's great too. Whew. So we are here for day 2 of our series on full-bodied leadership. And today we're going to be diving more deeply into the topic of entering initiation. This is no small topic, and I'm going to do my best to do it justice for us today in about 30 minutes. For those of you who are new to me or new to Guts and Grace, I want to just briefly introduce myself. So I'm Leanne Mallory. I'm an executive coach. I'm the creator of the Guts and Grace Women's Professional Coaching Program, author of the book by the same name, Guts and Grace, A Woman's Guide to Full-Bodied Leadership. I'm a teacher, an artist, a healer, and a guide for the secretly spiritual professional woman who is committed to making big change in her industry, her organization, or her community, and knows that she needs to do it without burning out. In my work, I help women step into the wisdom of their bodies to support the choices and decisions they make at work so that they can truly thrive and so that their organizations can thrive. Because what's true about ourselves and who are being at work is that we ourselves really make an impact, carry an imprint of the culture, especially for leaders, culture change agents, culture keepers inside of the companies that we work in. So as we begin, again, I invite you to just drop into your own feeling and sensation. I say just, but I realize that's not always a small task wherever you are. Maybe you're at your office, maybe you're at home. I think yesterday we had someone in the car who was listening. So take a moment to feel. If we're going to talk about the wisdom of our bodies and how to use it for the sake of great leadership, it's important that we practice what we preach. I'm doing that right now. And I invite you to do the same, and you're welcome to close your eyes. I also want to invite the possibility that you keep your eyes open, because sometimes we need to feel our bodies and also see what's happening around us. Maybe we're driving a car, or maybe we're in a board meeting and it's not really appropriate to be like, let me center and go inside. So do that however you do that now. And as we start, I want to affirm and call in that we are all in exactly the right place at the right time right now to do exactly the learning that will support us on each of our paths today. I want to affirm that those things that may have been hard are indeed a part of our healing, have been and will continue to be so. And that when we can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, it means that we are learning how to walk in the dark, that this capacity to go through change, to go through challenge really is a necessary skill for creativity, for innovation, and for becoming. And that we are becoming skilled practitioners of that right now. So we're here for a week of teaching and learning on what I call full-bodied leadership. And it's kind of short for fully embodied leadership. It means a lot of different things, and really through the conversations we're having here, I hope that we can each deepen in our understanding of that. What I want to say about the path to full-bodied leadership is that it takes time. And that's why I really wanted to do this series that gives you a sense of it is not just something you can snap your fingers and have access to, that there's a journey to go on or a path to walk to get there. And first and foremost, what I see is that it really asks us to do some dismantling, some untangling of what I call the patriarchy within. In other words, the internal patriarchal programming that I or we, as women in the workplace and in the world, may have taken on over the course of time. For the sake of being able to fit in, for the sake of being able to get ahead, for the sake of being able to walk in the world that maybe wasn't built by us. So this patriarchy within that I refer to really is about the behaviors, the mindsets, the ways of being and doing, even the embodied shaping, like how we carry ourselves, our posture, that was taught to us in these contexts that maybe we grew up with in our households, we grew up with in our communities, and or we worked in inside of our early career, or maybe even are currently working in now. And that's in some way the parts of ourself that are the, let's say, the patriarchy within, or the internalized stuff that we want to untangle, is the stuff that's not totally working for us. Maybe it is not enabling us to be our brightest, our truest, our most inspiring selves. And so this work is really about finding our way through to the other side of something different than that. Not because it's bad or wrong, but actually because it doesn't work. Because mostly what I've seen over 17 years of coaching women in the workplace is that these strategies that we develop to cope with that, to contend with that, to get by inside of that, don't actually help us get to the other side, don't actually help us get promoted. They do to a certain point. And then we have this thing that we kind of call a glass ceiling or a leadership cliff inside of many and most organizations and industries. And one of the reasons that is very hard to break is because we have learned to behave in a way that's not fully, completely aligned with our deepest zones of genius and our deepest builds that would have someone assess us as having executive presence or being able to really hold something much bigger than what we're currently holding. So instead, and I shared a lot about this in yesterday's video, if you missed it, I recommend going back and watching for kind of the foundation of entangled success and what it's like to be in success, but in the old paradigm, that there's this way in which we can end up getting stuck because we're replicating a system and then we keep getting used to keep replicating the same thing. Used sometimes in very good ways, right? We may be very well paid for how we're being used. We may be to some extent enjoying or getting ahead for how we're being used, quote unquote. But that it doesn't free us. It actually doesn't help us to get through the doorway of the next level, whatever that might be. So if you're on this session right now and you're listening and you're going, I'm pretty successful already, but it's the but that really we're getting into the meat of in these conversations. It might be that you're already a CEO or an executive or a senior level leader in your organization or your industry, and yet there's a bigger impact you want to make, or there's something that you realize is still beyond your capacity or beyond what you've been able to accomplish. And this is where the kind of rubber meets the road. Or it might be that you are more junior in your career and you aspire to senior level leadership, or you don't, but you want to change the culture or make a bigger impact in your organization. Again, the same thing operating here. So here on day 2, I'm going to talk about what I see really as the second stage on the path. The first stage where we were yesterday being entangled success or old paradigm success. For the journey to begin, the second stage we move into is what I call entering initiation. And you can kind of think a little bit of a hearkening to, say, Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, that there's something that we have to fall into or lean into or be drawn into or be pulled into that disrupts the status quo, that actually enables the possibility of real change. So sometimes when I talk about this stage, I'll also call it, like, or my clients will even call it, like, the fall. Maybe it's like a fall from grace, or it feels like a fall from grace, that things are really good, more or less, with a few caveats. And then something big happened, or in some way I kind of lost the traction of that. And it feels like I'm going dark, or I'm going in, or I'm going down, or there's something that kind of begins to unravel. So if you have read the book Guts and Grace, you'll know that there's a way that I actually start the book itself in this place. And it's kind of a strange place to start a leadership book. I ask the reader at the beginning to remember a time, the last time, I think I say, that you hit a wall. And what does that mean? The last time that you hit a wall? It's kind of like this moment when Something was working maybe, but not really working, or this moment when the rug was pulled out from under you. And I start there because it really is this disruption of the status quo that enables the journey to full-bodied leadership, or that enables the journey to something different to actually begin. What I think is interesting about that is that we don't necessarily count those moments as part of our leadership journey. We do, right? Informally, most of us know that I had this experience and it really made me who I am. It really changed something important for me. But does it count on paper? Does it go on our resumes? Is it the thing that we think we're going to get hired for? Often not. And what I want you to know is actually it really is a very juicy part of the journey. I also want to name that right now because I think those of you who are tracking me, who read my blogs, know that I've been in a moment a little bit like this lately. And I think as a society, we're in a moment of this right now. And many of us, many of the people I support and folks who are in my sphere of influence and my friends are going through something. It's like there were a lot of losses over the last couple of years and over the last couple of months in our collective experience. There have been a lot of things changing, certainly in the corporate sector right now and other domains. There's a lot of layoffs happening. There are people who are losing their jobs. There are people who are losing loved ones. So there's a lot of this happening. And also, I think, still and continued, this rampant sense of burning out and folks having a hard time like being able to stay in the game, maybe from mental health or from a physical health perspective. So it's a ripe time to talk about this stage. And I think part of my intention with this session today is to uplift this stage, to have it be something that we can celebrate, as hard as it may be, as opposed to something that we have to feel ashamed of or avoid talking about or try to hide or sweep under the rug in our experience as leaders and as folks who are making a difference in the world. So that being said, I want to share just a couple things about my own experience to give you a sense of the path I've walked and some of the hallmarks of this and why it matters this stage, and give you a practice that you can do if you are in this stage or for the sake of tending the parts of you that may have gone through a stage like this in the past or be in process of going into one now. Just a couple things about my own journey. What did this look like for me to be in this entering initiation or the fall stage in my 20s? It looked like a pretty massive burnout. I was a few years into my new career, which I spoke about last time we spoke. And really, I had a pretty big burnout experience and like a mental health meltdown that really took me out of the game for a number of months. Depending upon how and when I tell my story, I will reveal that there was really like a question of, is life worth living for me at that time? And that my psychological experience got a little dicey at that period of time. So it really was like almost a full pull out of the game. What happened though was it actually led me to move to California, find my way into a different kind of career. Like a lot of things really came from the soil that got kind of kicked up at that moment. A lot of great things began to grow from that. And then in my 30s, I had been living in the UK and ended an engagement. So I was engaged to be married with a man who lived there. A lot of backstory that I won't share all the details of here, but things kind of fell apart in that relationship. In a way, I would say I, more than in my 20s, like said yes or embraced the initiation, like kind of helped to co-steward and actually allow myself to step into versus really resist what happened in those moments. But I came back and I got involved in a kind of a messy personal development situation that some folks have called a cult. Through that, I actually lost a job and eventually started the business that I run now. So that's kind of my middle of the career, if you will, middle of a certain period of time story. And it really was another like, am I going to make it through this? Like there was a lot of financial strain at that period of time. There was also, again, a lot of mental health strain at that period of time, which is some of the energy of falling apart that I tend to run more that than, let's say, physical health. And more recently, and I've shared this with some of you, I'm going through another stage that's feels a little softer. It feels a little bit more like I'm up for initiations in general. I've walked this path for a long time, but losing a dear pet friend, and also saying yes to a very unconventional new marriage proposal. And in each round of going through this, with some other kind of mini initiations in between, it's as if I'm being asked to be more and more willing, or more and more in participation versus in resistance with these processes that my life and my kind of body mind system is taking me through. So how do you know if you are entering initiation, or if you are in an initiation phase? First of all, I think some of the hallmarks are often a loss. It may be a loss of health status. I got sick, something broke, I was in an accident, right? Something happened that like took my health or my kind of physical well-being out of the game. It could be a loss of wealth, a big breakdown from a financial perspective. That could be anything from losing a job to finding out that what you thought was happening in your business or your finances wasn't actually what was really there, and there's kind of an explosion around that. Could be loss of a person, someone dear to you, someone important in your world. Either you knew it was coming, or it happened in an unexpected way, or even the loss of a community or the loss of an identity. Some of you know that my life partner, went through a gender transition a couple of years ago, and what a massive initiation to realize to oneself, and then to come out to the world as someone different in a gender identity than I thought I was all of this time. And what falls apart, what falls away, what gets reconfigured through a process of that. This was, not something they were thrown into, but kind of, right? It was like, oh, I'm seeing what's true here. And then the old story falls away, falls apart. So another hallmark of this stage can be like it can feel like the rug is pulled out from under your feet, like the ground you used to stand on isn't really stand-onable anymore. Maybe it literally like it dropped away, or it's like a slow kind of dissolving of the ground. And what's interesting about that is it can feel like, again, a drop, like you've lost something. But if we take seriously what we were talking about yesterday, that this kind of pre-programmed path of success that is a certain kind of entanglement to the old paradigm, that as the ground begins to dissolve, as scary as it can be, it does start to create this field where something new could be possible. It does start to create this field, again, scary, even terrifying as it can be, that the plateau, the kind of current trajectory that you were on that was working but not really working, might be open to something new. Yeah. Another hallmark of this stage is disorientation. I'm not sure what's happening. Maybe I'm not sure who I am. I'm not sure where up and down is. I'm not sure where the ground is anymore. Things can start to unravel in, I don't know when this started to get used. I think it was probably quite a long time ago, but in the field of personal and professional development, we'll sometimes talk about this metaphor of the butterfly, right? That when a caterpillar goes into the cocoon before it becomes a butterfly, it kind of becomes soup. And in the soup of that dissolution and disentangling and unraveling and unbecoming, there's a time when it's like, I don't know what the heck I am. I don't know where the heck, what's going to happen here. And it's really important. It's a really important stage in somatics, in the work with the body, and like the full human experience. We'll also call this stage opening. And what I think is beautiful about that, right, is if this is the old paradigm of how things have worked for me up until now, there's a softening, there's something that starts to be able to change, and then the body can have a new experience, as can the spirit. I think another big hallmark of this stage often is that we can, unless we've actively been the one initiating the initiation, I'm choosing this, right? I'm going down this path. I quit my job and decided to take some time off, and I have no idea who I am now, for example. I moved to a new country and decided to disrupt everything. Like, we can have our initiations this way, but if we haven't, then there can often be this also sense of victimization. It's happening to me. Why me? Why did this happen? This is hard. I don't want to have to face this. And especially so if it's, the loss of a loved one, or something that's really big from a health challenge perspective. So those are some of the, aspects of the experience. And one of the things that's especially hard about that is that these hallmarks, the hallmarks of this stage, are directly in counter to some of our core human needs. That as human beings, we have a need for safety. We have a need for a sense of belonging. We have a need for a sense of dignity. And these get disrupted in this time of change. They get disrupted in the disillusioning. So no wonder we don't opt into our own initiations all that often, right? No wonder that maybe we have to be thrown into it, or something pulls the rug out from under our feet for us to be willing to contend with what feels like a loss or a disruption, or a break in our sense of safety or our sense of dignity or our sense of belonging. Who would want to do that on purpose? But if you've been through something like this before, you may have found that there is often also some gift on the other side. And if nothing else, there's an opportunity to use the experience as a potential upgrade. I went through a health challenge, and now I'm really different with how I take care of myself, for example, and that needed to happen to be able to withstand, or to be able to rise to where I wanted to go. So I'm aware that we are in a collective live experience here. I'm going to invite, if anyone is willing, to put something about an experience you've had like this in the chat. Like this thing that I went through was like an initiation for me. And I also want to acknowledge we're live on a number of channels. And if you don't feel comfortable to do that, that's okay. I think it can really matter to our collective acceptance of this stage as a stage, that we take a risk to say, hey, this happened to me. I went through this thing. This was part of my growth or development as a leader. So if you feel called, and if you are willing, put something in the chat, like this was an initiation or an experience of loss, breakdown to breakthrough that I am having now, if that's true for you, and or that I have had in the past, that I'm willing to own. And while you're doing that, or thinking about whether you want to do that, I'll just share a few things about why this stage is important, and how it can, how we can enter it well, how we can be in it well. So why important? The truth is, this stage of entering initiation actually creates the opportunity for us to decide if we want to face into making more space for our future, for what's possible through the experience of letting go, and or to face, if we want to, the experience of healing in some way. That might be healing from trauma. That could be healing from our addictions, for example, or just a general willingness, openness, possibility of something getting worked in us that leaves us more whole on the other side. So this is it's a critical stage that really invites you to do the difficult work of choosing how you think, how you feel, how you show up through this process. And in that choosing, it actually lays the ground for who you are becoming, or maybe invited to become on the other side. Perhaps for your wholeness, perhaps for your capacity to lead in a certain way that really is part of your zone of genius, but hasn't been fully available to you before. So the possibility in this stage is to, let's say, show up for your initiation versus resist it. One of my mentors ran a course that she called "Don't Wait for a Crisis to Change Your Life." You can imagine not many people went to that course, at least not with that name. They eventually rebranded it, but it was the thing that made sense to her. It was like, oh, can I choose in? Can I opt in? Versus have to suffer from, or suffer into, or be thrown into this. And again, it's not necessarily what we're taught in our leadership. If anything, we're taught to stall it, to foreclose on it, to breeze past it, to keep the status quo, which might translate into feeling or being stuck. Thank you to those who took the risk to share here. So I see Ashley recently lost a parent. Leah says moving to a new country and starting over, for example. Sorry for your loss, Ashley. And what it is to be in it. Yeah. So how do we be in this stage? I'm going to share a couple of keys, maybe practices, elements, and then we'll do a short practice together. I'm aware that our time will likely be longer than initially planned once again, so there's always a lot to share here, a lot to do here, but we'll just roll with it. And if you need to jump off, come back and watch later, or stay with us if you can. Some of the gateways, some of the kind of keys to unlock this stage, meaning to, can I say, get the most out of it? That sounds kind of bad when I say that out loud, but it's like, how can I be in this in such a way that I have the best chance of coming out the other side even more whole? How can I be in this stage in a way that acknowledges that there's deepening for me, there's refinement, there's possibility, there's learning for me, there's healing, there's growing for me in this kind of a moment or this kind of experience? As I say it out loud, I think, yes, for us as individuals, and gosh, for us as a collective, for humanity, for the United States, for some of the bigger collectives that we live inside of as well. One of the tools that I teach and that I continue to deeply learn how to practice is the tool of surrender. So allowing, not accepting what is, like it's good or it's right or it's okay, but also not pushing away, not resisting, like being in what is so, in such a way that your body, your mind, your heart soften enough to go through the embodied experience of release, to go through the embodied experience of the healing that may be possible, of the grieving that may be needed, to actually be able to let ourselves feel and be in those things, not just as an idea, right, but as a physical, a physiological softening, a physiological allowing. Another key, another gateway in this stage can be forgiveness. Not an easy one. Am I willing to not carry a grudge for what happened and who did it, but rather seek my own freedom, seek my own dignity, seek my own sovereignty inside of that, in my own experience, so that my experience really gets to be what I want to say is like what gets to be my grace. I'm not even sure exactly what I mean by that, but the practice of letting my experience all the way in for me and what it will be about in my life, if that makes sense. Deep resilience practice is another gateway to feeling in this context, because in order to weather these kinds of things, these kinds of moments, we have to be ourselves fortified enough, tended enough, that we can and that we want to keep experiencing, keep feeling, let it move through us, not shut it down, not turn away, not foreclose, really be able to stay in, so that the work, the healing, the process gets to continue all the way through. And the last one is what I'll call responsibility. And this is a very tricky one. That in these experiences where the rug is pulled out from under us, we're taken out of our game, maybe we've self-initiated, but often we're falling into or finding these things happening to us, that, deeply woven, I think, into the work of Guts and Grace is the ability to have a conversation that could be heard as blaming the victim, but really is about empowering the victim, because there's something about being able to say, I also participated in this. It's not my fault, and it's also my fault. I may have called this in, or at least participated in calling this in, and in naming that, you get to re-own a certain kind of empowerment that has us be co-creators and co-participants in, not just, at the cost of our lives. And when I work with folks who've gone through something like this and have ridden that edge, right? It's like there's a part of our healing that's like, it wasn't me and fuck you. And like that we need. That's a certain part of the journey. And then there's another part of the journey that's like, and I was in it too. And I am growing in this way as a result of it. That when I work with folks who are on the other side of an experience where that was part of their learning, their growth, their healing, it's like there's a capacity that they have to also influence, also move things that that's really palpable because they own the extent to which they're participants in the drama of their lives. Again, tricky, potentially tender, maybe not. It depends on who you are and what conversation you're in your head about what's true for you and what you're facing right now. Yeah. So, given all of that, I want to invite us into a short practice, and then I'll offer a couple of additional tips before we wrap up together. And here's how I want to frame the practice. So this practice connects to some of the work we do in Guts and Grace around feeling emotions and being in a blend with them or being in the experience of them. So really, like if you are in an initiation right now, if you are in one of these moments in your life, in some way or another, that something has pulled the rug out from under or is unraveling or is disentangling in you, that you've been taken down or you're facing something hard, then I invite you to use the few minutes we have here just to be with that. And let the guidance be support on how to be with that for this moment. You can take it home and practice it some more later if you want to. And then if you're not in that kind of a moment, you might pick something that you've been through that doesn't feel totally complete, or that you sense, I went through that, but maybe I did foreclose a little, or I'm on the other side, but there's still baggage there. Or you could pick something that's more like, this is coming and I'm holding it at bay. I hope that makes sense, right? I know that my parents are aging and, dot, dot, dot. So it could be like something that's on the horizon, but maybe you're doing a little bit this with. So whatever you choose something. If it changes throughout the process, that's okay, but start with something in mind and take a few breaths and bring your awareness. So it's like set that kind of on one of your shoulders and then come back into relationship with your body and feel. Taking a breath in, releasing a breath out. Taking another breath in, releasing another breath out. And let yourself begin to notice where maybe you can feel some part of the energy of that in your body. Maybe it's like you sense a mood coming on or an emotion coming on as you feel and connect with this. Maybe literally it's more like, oh, I lock my jaw, or I hold tension in my hips or my fingers. And just be with it for a moment. So let your attention rest in whatever that is or on whatever that is versus go somewhere else. You don't even have to know what it is, yeah? Like, oh, I feel tight here. Okay. I feel heavy here. Great. Good. And in spirit, with your intention, let that part of you or that thing you're attending to know that you're curious about it and you welcome it. You're not asking it to go away. If that's not totally true, try it on or be in as much honesty as you can there. Good, and as you do that, keep feeling and notice. Maybe something changes, maybe it gets quieter or louder, or it shifts to somewhere else. You can follow it if it does. And then if this feels comfortable for you at this moment, let the volume get a little louder on it. So if it's something that's tense, maybe you let it tense a little more. Or if it's a feeling like a mood, maybe you let yourself have a little more access to that mood. You may not know how to do that, but hold an intention and see what happens. So we're in a practice of surrendering to, allowing, not resisting, in the very threads of our being, at the micro level of our embodiment. Good, and if you feel called, so it can be enough just to be with for a moment, create a little space for it here. But if you feel called, you can also ask, what's here? Or what do you want me to know? It may or may not respond. Good. Depending upon where you're at, you all may be having very different experiences. If this feels important to stay with, feel free to do that. I'm going to kind of bring us out of the container. One could do this for a much longer practice. It may be there's not a lot up for you and you didn't feel a lot, and that's another version of what can happen here. But we're training the body and the nervous system to allow, to be with, to not rush through, to not shut down, which is a deep practice, actually. And it's often not what we're trained in the workplace or in our kind of traditional leadership texts and schools. So whatever's there for you, take another deep breath, maybe an exhale. If you were in deep, you can imagine yourself coming a bit to the surface. Let whatever was you're attending to soften a bit into the background without turning it off necessarily. So this is just one small puzzle piece, one small taste of this territory. How do we be in the experience of entering initiation or being taken into some kind of an unraveling, unprogramming, unhooking for the sake of something else on the other side? We'll talk more about that over the next couple of days, what's on the other side of this stage. But in the meantime, if this stage is important for you or speaks to you right now, a couple of other practices besides coming back to and going deeper in what we just started here. Journaling can be a great practice here. A couple of prompts could be some journaling around surrender. I am accepting, I'm surrendering to, I'm allowing. With the knowledge that it doesn't mean that you're therefore saying this is good or I want more of this, but just what can I be in a yes to and an openness to right now? And then secondly, depending upon timing, right? Not right away, probably, but there could be journaling on responsibility. I contributed to this in this way. I'm a co-conspirator here. Here's how, here's what I see. Or a co-participant. You know, a loss of a loved one, like that might not make sense, but it's like, oh, is there a way that my grief connects to how I wasn't connected enough to this person or didn't play the role I wanted to play in their life? And so the loss really hurts. I'm making this up for you. But then therefore, what's the part of responsibility that's in that, right? Not overwriting just the grief, but being in the learning of it too. Great. And then another really useful practice in this stage can be something like a resilience date. And I want to say maybe not traditional self-care, like we sometimes talk about it in the workplace, where I kind of check out into something, but more like I check into something. I check into myself and do something. Maybe it's nature, maybe it's my fireplace, maybe it's, a long, slow pause or a deep conversation that actually does leave me feeling more resourced, more nourished on the other side. So you have my permission to do that if it's not something you would normally take time for. It's part of the practice. Okay, thank you all. This is, it's a lot to do these things live. Thank you for being here if you're still here. If you are still here, go ahead and put something in the chat, like what you're taking away, what felt meaningful to you here. Maybe a practice you want to be in, or just like a word or a phrase that feels relevant for you right now, having listened, having been here. While you're doing that, I want to let you know that tomorrow we're going to do another live. We'll be talking about stage 3 in this journey, which I call engaging and dismantling. So moving from this is happening to me to I am actively diving in and working with the untangling of things in me that might be part of the journey of getting to full-bodied leadership, fully embodied leadership. And meanwhile, I want to just remind you all that, again, as some of you already know, our core offering here at Guts and Grace Women's Leadership is a year-long leadership coaching and mastermind program, which is called Guts and Grace. And that we also run a high-impact 10-week intro course called Activate, which begins in April. And that both of these programs really are designed to promote career activation, to create an opportunity for, like I mentioned at the beginning, secretly spiritual mid to senior level women who are working inside of organizations, who are working inside of their communities, who are working inside of different collectives, who are committed to leading change, but who also know they need and want to do it without burning out. They need and want to do it without overriding their initiations, who need and want to do it in a way that is conducive to being human, versus conducive to being another number or doing it the right way. And so if this speaks to you, I really welcome more connection around that. That could look like checking out our Activate course, again, which is coming up in a couple of months. Could be to book a discovery call with myself or one of my team members, which is an opportunity to go deeper through more of a coaching conversation. Here's what I'm in, here's what I could use support with. In particular today, if you are in an initiation, if you find yourself in the entering of an initiation or coming out of a big initiation of some kind, and you know that you could use help, either to weather the storms, to let yourself surrender, to feel it, to let it work you in the ways that will bring you to the next place in a healthy and whole way, or to integrate an experience you've had over the last year, couple of years, week, couple of weeks, I invite you to book a call and have a conversation with us. And we can help you find out if any of this kind of support might be the right fit for you. So those things are available here. And last but not least, I want to go ahead and close us here by affirming that no matter what you have been and are facing in your life, that no matter what you've been facing in your life over the past few weeks or months, and no matter how challenging it's been, that you still are in exactly the right place at exactly the right time, having the experiences that are for you right now. And I want to affirm that we are learning today, what we practice today, what we learn today will pay us back over the long run as we practice. And that you are always on purpose, that the things you need come to you at the speed of life in the way that they need to. And that everything is working for us, no matter how unusual or challenging or surprising it might be. I wish you a beautiful rest of your day, and thank you for those who have shared some realizations here in the chat. We'll see you all tomorrow for our next session. Take great care.